Hi, greetings. This is Eric again. Continuing into the series on the Pillar of Evidence of Archaeology, um, it's such a fascinating realm of study. Actually, there's just so much here, and if I think of what to start with, I really think the best starting point is to sort of understand the history of archaeology, um, because if we can take a look at the history of archaeology, um, then we're going to understand how recent it is. You'll find that what we have discovered in terms of validating Bible is very impressive. So first, why is archaeology, before I get into kind of the history, why is archaeology a powerful evidence for the Bible? If you think about it, why am I able to even use it? Well, it's because the Bible does not read as a sometime, someplace type book. If you think about it, like a fictional book typically reads, once upon a time. The Bible doesn't read once upon a time. It reads, for example, in the days when King Cyrus reigned over Persia, in the days when this and this people was reigning in this province. It does not read once upon a time. It reads in a time that ties it to something that can be observed in history. It also, so the Bible contains mention of details and their measurable relevancy to real times in history, real places, real times, real people. It can be contrasted against other comparable beliefs or like, for example, the report of a global flood in the days of Noah in the Bible. Well, there's other religions purporting things like these, but you can compare the specifics. For example, the ark measurements, and see one is going to make more sense than the other. There are many examples of where the Bible is cross-referenceable with archaeological finds, for this reason, that it gives you dates and times. Dates and times can be calculated in a Bible based on calculating from its own internal genealogies. An example of a biblical genealogy is like this, in Genesis 5:1-9. This is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day that God created man, he made him in the likeness of Elohim, of God. Male and female, he created them, and he blessed them, and he called their name Adam in the day they were created. Adam lived 130 years, and he brought forth a son in his own likeness, after his own image, and he called his name Sheth. After he brought forth Sheth, the days of Adam were 800 years. I know this sounds like a very long lifespan. That's because it is. If you're skeptical, I understand why. It should suffice to say that from the Bible standpoint, not having as much lawlessness and disobedience in the world meant man afforded higher lifespans, being more closer to the time when he was originally created immortal, before he fell to sin. So you can read these things, and they're bringing times into the mix. Adam, the rest of the days of Adam were 800 years. He brought forth many sons and daughters. All the days Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And Sheth, his son, lived 105 years and brought forth Enosh. And after he brought forth Enosh, Sheth lived 807 years and brought forth sons and daughters. So all the days of Sheth were 912 years, and he died. And Enosh lived 90 years and brought forth Canaan. Continuing to verse 32 with many more, Genesis 5 gives a detailed genealogy, for example, with dates up to Noah. Later, after the flood, the global flood, more genealogies with dates are given. Genesis 11:10-15. This is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and brought forth Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. After he brought forth Arpachshad, Shem lived 500 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Arpachshad lived 35 years and brought forth Shelah. And after he brought forth Shelah, Arpachshad lived 403 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Shelach lived 30 years and brought forth Eber. And after he brought forth Eber, Shelach lived 403 years and brought forth sons and daughters, and so on and so on. And essentially, genealogies in the Bible, the Judeo-Christian scripture, carry on all the way from Genesis to the time of Jesus. And since we know when Jesus did his ministry on earth around the 30 ADs period, we can calculate from our own time going backward the timeline of the Bible. Therefore, when we have an event that happens in the Bible, we can approximately calculate the timeline for that and then cross-reference it against archaeological strata that we can date approximately to that time through numerous methods, sometimes through carbon dating or something like that, as much as it's reliable, up to maybe 5,000 years or so. Very helpful, as well as, but particularly prediction based on archaeological strata, through sedimentary deposits, other things. We can get a general idea for this. There are many genealogies. Genesis 46 concerning the 12 patriarchs of Israel and their offspring, Numbers 1 going to Moses and Aaron, his brother, various others, continuing all the way to the Gospels. Matthew chapter 1 giving a genealogy from Abraham to Jesus. Luke chapter 3 having a genealogy traceable from the first man, Adam, to Jesus. If one is looking to deceive people by making up fiction, it doesn't make a lot of sense to include such detailed genealogies, if you think about it. But the other benefit is these things give us dates. So this gives us something to use measure archaeology against. But another example of why archaeology is going to be powerful is because the details given are often given in the ways of times and wars and kings, who potentially we can find inscriptions about them in archaeology. We can find castles they dwelled in, and all kinds of documents in ancient cuneiform texts and all this matters of the things like that. For example, 2 Samuel 1 verse 1 reads, "And it came to be after the death of Shaul, when David returned from striking the Amalekites, that David remained 2 days in Ziklag." So we have David, King Saul, the time of his death, Amalekites, and a place, Ziklag. 2 Samuel 10:1, "And it came to be after this that the sovereign of the children of Ammon died, and Hanun his son reigned in his place." We've got names of kings, names of sons of kings, and we've got a people group associated. 1 Kings 20 verse 1, "And Ben-Hadad, the sovereign of Aram," that would be ancient Syria more or less, "gathered all his army, and there were 32 sovereigns with him, with horses and chariots, and he went up and besieged Shomeron, Samaria, and fought against it." 2 Kings 3 verse 1, "And Jehoram, son of Ahab, the king of Israel, began to reign over Israel at Shomeron in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, sovereign of Judah, and reigned 12 years. 2 Kings 12:1, "Jehoash began to reign in the 7th year of Jehu, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Sibia of Beersheba." Isaiah chapter 6 verse 1, "In the year that sovereign Uzziyahu died, I saw," so Isaiah's prophecy can be dated, "I saw Jehovah sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the set apart place." Isaiah 7:1, "And it came to be in the days of Ahaz, son of Jotham, son of Uzziyahu, sovereign of Yehuda, that Retzin, sovereign of Aram, king of Aram, Damascus, Tiberia, Pekah, son of Ramaliahu, and the sovereign of Israel, went up to Jerusalem to fight against it, but could not prevail against it." Jeremiah 1:1-2, "The words of Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, of the priests who were in Anathoth, in the land of Benjamin, to whom the word of Jehovah came in the days of Yoshiahu, sovereign of Judah, until the end of the 11th year of Sidkiyahu, son of Yoshiahu, sovereign of Judah, until the exile of Jerusalem in the 5th month Daniel 1, verse 1 reads, "In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, sovereign of Yehuda, Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, came to Jerusalem and besieged it." Amos 1:1. The words of Amos, who was going among the herdsmen of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah, sovereign of Yehuda, and in the days of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, sovereign of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. Zephaniah 1:1. The word of Jehovah came to Zephaniah, son of Cushi, son of Gedaliah, son of Amariah, son of Hizkiyahu, in the days of Ammon, sovereign of Judah. Haggai 1:1. In the 2nd year of Darius the sovereign, in the 6th new moon, on the 1st day of the new moon, the word of Jehovah came by Haggai, the prophet, to Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, the governor of Yehuda, and to the Yehoshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest, saying, and Ezra 1:1, and in the 1st year of Koresh, that's Cyrus, I believe, sovereign of Persia, that the word of Jehovah might be accomplished, Jehovah stirred up the spirit of Koresh, sovereign of Persia, to proclaim throughout all his reign, also in writing, saying, Nehemiah 1:1. The words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, and it came to be in the new moon of Kislev, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, as I was in the citadel of Shushan. Luke, and so getting to the Gospels, Luke 2, chapter 2, verse 1 to 2, and it came to be in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus for all the world to be registered of the Roman Empire. This took place as a first registration while Quirinius was governing Syria. These are just a few small examples of scripture mentioning names, times, places, which are mentioned as real, tangible history, not some once upon a time type thing. There was a man who, something ambiguous. This is not ambiguous by any means. The Bible does not read as a mythology, but rather as a history with tangible events that can be tested against archaeology. There are numerous wars detailed, with the times identified by the names and the area of sovereignty and the kings being given also. These are traceable and testable details, reading as tangible history, not mythology. Therefore, we can test it with archaeology. So why is archaeology relevant to the Bible? That's why it's going to be a good place to start looking. Now, I want to give some history on archaeology as soon as I can find the place where I had my notes here. And the point is this, to help you understand why it's phenomenal that we have because we do actually have a lot of evidence for the Bible through archaeology, and that's surprising when you consider the youthfulness of archaeology and various other things. So my intent in what I'm quoting is not to make an excuse, as some might interpret if they didn't understand the context, for a lack of evidence. It's actually to praise the plethora of evidence we do find, considering the circumstances would have seemed unlikely. But if you'll hear this quote, this is from the Zondervan Handbook of Biblical Archaeology, which is a book-by-book guide to archaeology discoveries related to the Bible. It reads, "The primary limitation of archaeology is the extremely fragmentary nature of archaeological evidence. Only a fraction of material culture has survived. Most of the great civilizations of the past were destroyed in antiquity through wars, looters, erosion, natural disasters, or simply the ravages of time. To this we may add the hundreds of sites that have been and continue to be destroyed through building projects, ancient and modern, military maneuvers, religious and political uprisings, and pillaged by looters, such as ISIS, who have elevated black market antiquities into an international cartel. Another problem includes the formation processes that affect both remains and interpretation of them. These processes include the actions of cultural formation, human behavior, and non-cultural formation, natural environment. that may erode, relocate, and transform the data left on the site, including the removal of layers of history. Such activity destroys the archaeological record preserved for that time period. Moreover, of the thousands of known surviving ancient sites, only a fraction have been surveyed, much less excavated. Usually only a fraction, somewhere estimated around 5%. So usually only a fraction of the site is actually dug, a process sometimes taking decades. Then only a percentage of what is excavated is ever published in books. Of the 500,000 cuneiform texts discovered over the past centuries, only about 10% have been published. The meticulous work of organizing, analyzing, and interpreting finds in labs and research facilities by multiple professionals assigned materials in their area of expertise, sometimes on several continents, may occupy many years of work. Often these professionals have multiple projects or additional teaching or research responsibilities. These restrictive conditions, as well as the need for accuracy in interpreting finds, as the costs of publication often result in delays in the publication of final excavation reports. This limits both scholarly and public access to the results of the excavations and prolongs the process of gaining information on a site. For example, Kathleen Kenyon's final report for Jericho waited some 30 years, and the Dead Sea Scroll fragments from Cave 4 took over 40 years. So my intent of quoting this is, again, not to promote pessimism or skepticism. First, it's to give you background that archaeology is a young study in the history of humanity. It's a young practice, and we haven't found everything yet. Only very little. But on the contrary, the fact that with how much little we found, we find so much evidence of the Judeo-Christian narrative in that is fascinating and compelling. And while I'm sure some would claim that there might be some archaeological bias, I'm sure you will find that is not sustainable, as many of the archaeologists nowadays are atheists and agnostics. Many of them are very anti-Christian, and if they find some find that seems to validate, they'll try to explain why it's not really related to the Bible in a lot of cases. So preemptively, unless they have no choice. So what we really observe is that we find a good amount of evidence, despite that we wouldn't really expect to find a good amount of evidence if the Bible, especially if the Bible's events were not real. So let's get into some quick references. Now this I've gathered when I was first trying to understand biblical archaeology, I didn't really even know where to begin. So I started searching YouTube videos, which gets you some very funny things. So this comes from one that's called Historical Accuracy of the Bible, Silencing the Skeptics with Archaeology. .mp4. It's on YouTube. It was on YouTube, probably still is on YouTube. Its method of presentation is kind of antagonistic, so I'm not going to recommend it for that if you're easily offended. But I will say that this is pretty much direct. This is really direct quotations from it. I'm not claiming to have found that information, but what I can tell you is the information provided in it is accurate, because I have access to the Zondervan Handbook of Biblical Archaeology. I have the book by K.A. Kitchen on the reliability of the Old Testament. This book here, very good book. I have classically had access to Bible and Spade and various archaeology, the Biblical Archaeological Review from just from general document access through the internet, things like these, and you can really you can find out very quickly. Though the person who put together this particular video referenced here, Silencing Skeptics with Archaeology, he is a bit antagonistic. He kind of comes off as maybe having a bit of an ego there, or a personal offense to it, it's not really cause for dismissing the information because you can validate this information and it is relevant. So he gave about 43 quick findings. What we have in biblical archaeology goes far beyond that, and I'm going to present to you more than these. But considering the order of what I just presented to you prior, not just about archaeology, but how Bible ties itself to peoples, places, times, wars, events, dates of kings, things like these, you're going to see why, get a better sense now of why what we're finding here is very phenomenal. So I gave you some quotations that were directly from the Bible, you'll recall earlier in the video. So let's get into some of these findings. The oldest known inscription of the Hebrew god Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. So the Bible's, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Bible, has this covenantal name. In the Hebrew characters Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Generally debated in how it's pronounced. Some say it's pronounced Yahweh, some say Jehovah. Nevertheless, an oldest known inscription of the name of the Hebrew god Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh was found in hieroglyphics and is dated to around 1400 BC, which is interesting timeline. This is the general timeline of the Exodus. The inscription was found in the remains of an Egyptian temple built by Imhotep III at Soleb, which is in modern-day Sudan. The text on the inscription refers to a wandering group of followers of Yahweh who are most likely the ancient Israelites. So it's a useful text for corroborating potentially the account of the Hebrew tribe serving the Hebrew god Yahweh, Jehovah. Another finding, there is a slab of granite with many engravings which is more than 10 feet tall, found in 1896 in western Thebes, Egypt. It contains the oldest certain reference to Israel outside the Bible. It was carved around 1200 BC in hieroglyphics and is called the Merneptah Stele. It is currently housed in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The word Israel appears at the bottom of the slab, and it corroborates the existence of ancient Israel in that time. Another one, there is an ancient piece of stone with Paleo-Hebrew inscriptions containing reference to the biblical King David, the son of Ishai. It is about a foot tall and was written about 870 to 750 BC. David is the biblical king, son of Ishai, Jesse, one of the most infamous kings of the Bible. It is called the Tel Dan Stele. It refers to the royal house of David. It was found through excavations at the ancient city of Dan in 1993, and it is now located in the Israel Museum. So that's corroborating a lot of books with what it's revealing about the existence of King David. 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, Psalms, various other passages of the Hebrew Bible. It's tying them as something real and tangible. Large portions of the wall of King Solomon is accredited having built in the book of 1 Kings 9:15 in the Bible, have been found at ancient Gezer, being found by archaeologists and rightly identified as the same wall. A wall carving found in the Karnak temple complex in Egypt, for another finding, dated around 925 BC, contains much writing commemorating the victory of Pharaoh Shishak's military exploits in various regions. It lists the Israelite city of Megiddo as one of the many attacked by the Egyptians, corroborating the biblical accounts of 1 Kings of this same Pharaoh who's mentioned by name. There's a limestone monument known as the Kirk Monolith, standing approximately 7 feet high, currently located in a British museum, which was discovered in 1861 in Kirk, Turkey. It was originally carved around 852 BC by the Assyrians. The writing on the monument refers to a battle involving King Ahab of Israel, mentioned in the Bible, not one of the most popular kings of all time in Israeli history. Really a promoter of ways against the Bible, viewed as a very bad character, but nevertheless frequently referred to in biblical texts of 1 Kings 16:29 and chapter 22, onward from 16:29 to 22, and 2 Chronicles 18, corroborating those texts. The Mesha stele, also called the Moabite stone, is an inscribed black basalt monument written in the ancient Moabite language around 835 BC. Standing nearly 4 feet tall, it was found in 1868 in the land of ancient Moab, now modern Jordan. It contains references to ancient kings mentioned also in the biblical text, such as the Israelite king Omri in 1 Kings and 2 Kings, and the monument also mentions the covenant name of the Israelite god Jehovah. So that's corroborating more from 1 Kings and 2 Kings. The black obelisk of Shalmaneser III, dated to around 827 BC and made in ancient Assyria, standing about 6.5 feet high and made of fine-grained black limestone. The text in it mentions tribute tax given by Omri and Jehu, kings of Israel, mentioned in the Bible in 1 Kings and 2 Kings. It depicts an Israelite king, likely Jehu, bowing down to the king of Assyria. The obelisk was found in 1846 in Nimrod and now resides in the British Museum, corroborating biblical texts such as 1 Kings and 2 Kings, and those mentioning King Jehu, and Omri in particular. The stele of Zakur, discovered at Tel Afis in 1930, southeast of Aleppo, in the territory of the ancient kingdom of Hamath. An inscribed black basalt slab refers to the king of Aram, Hazael, mentioned in the Bible in 1 Kings 19:15. It is dated to approximately 800 BC. The artifact is about 24 inches tall, and the writing is in Aramaic. That's more from 1 Kings. A bronze seal was found in Megiddo in 1904. The Hebrew lettering inscribed on it reads, "Belonging to Shema, the servant of Jeroboam," and scholars believe it to be from King Jeroboam II, who is referred to in the biblical passages such as 2 Kings 13:13. The seal is dated to the 8th century, and its size is about 1.5 inches, and it was found around Megiddo. A clay seal with an impression dated to the 8th century BC contains the Hebrew text belonging to Ahaz, son of Jotham, king of Yehuda. Ahaz was a biblical king referenced in 2 Kings and Isaiah. It is roughly 1.5 inches in size and is now in a private collection. There is a brick with inscribed cuneiform text located in the Oriental Institute Museum at the University of Chicago, which was found in Assyria in the city of Khorazabad during excavations that took place at 1929 to 1935. It refers to the Assyrian king, which reigned from 721 to 705 BC, King Sargon II. This king is also referred to in the Bible in Isaiah chapter 20, verse 1. A tunnel was found in Jerusalem, which is still open, about 1/3 of a mile long. Many scholars believe it to be King Hezekiah's tunnel, dated to around 700 BC, though it is not without controversy. That would help corroborate the text of the tunnel built by Hezekiah in 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 20, to bring water to Jerusalem. The water in this tunnel is roughly knee-deep. Regardless, it has ancient Hebrew inscription in it that, in the very least, validates and shows the ancient Jewish presence in Jerusalem in antiquity, contrary to those who report otherwise. An artifact known as Sennacherib's prism, made in ancient Assyria around 700 BC of baked clay. It is approximately 15 inches tall. The cuneiform text refers to King Hezekiah of Judah and the Assyrian king Sennacherib, both of whom are documented in biblical texts such as 2 Kings 19 verse 9. In the inscription, it speaks of trapping Hezekiah, king of Jerusalem, in Jerusalem like a caged bird. This language makes a lot of sense considering what the biblical text explains of Sennacherib, how he came up against all the wall cities around Jerusalem and sent a messenger called the Rabshakeh to deliver great taunts and boasts and slander to intimidate the people of Jerusalem into submission to his yoke. Therefore, the taunt and boast-like words in this inscription lines up very much with the biblical account of the messages. It matches the character we'd expect. it is currently in a museum in Chicago, and also really the Bible account is that they were penned in the city until Hezekiah brought the matter before God and prayed, and God sent a delivering angel to smite many of the warriors of Assyria, causing them to effectively pull back. Um, a lot of the account here is matching up. A wall relief carving depicting the siege of Lachish from the Assyrian point of view currently resides in the British Museum. The original carving was dated around 700 BC. The full panel stood about 9 feet tall, measured 62 feet in length. The original carving was destroyed in the 1850s in the ancient city of Nineveh. The exact same event is recorded in the biblical text of 2 Kings. A clay prism known as the Esarhaddon prism, made by the Assyrian king Esarhaddon around 672 BC. The text inscribed on it refers to King Manasseh of Judah, who is frequently referred to in the Bible in passages such as 2 Kings 20 verse 21. The prism's writing is in cuneiform script and was found in 1920s in the ruins of Nineveh. It stands about 13 inches high and is now stored in the British Museum. Excuse me for a second, I do need some water. I could continue. A wall carving fashioned in the 7th century BC, located in the modern-day Luxor, Egypt, made of sandstone, shows Pharaoh Terharka worshipping an Egyptian god. Pharaoh Terharka was originally from the kingdom of Cush. He was the son of Piye, the Nubian king of Napata, who had prior conquered Egypt. He is referred to in the Bible both in 2 Kings 19 verse 9 and Isaiah 37:9. A monument to King Esarhaddon of Assyria depicting him in commemoration of one of his military victories over Egypt was found in 1881 in the locale of modern Turkey. The text on it is written in cuneiform script, and it is now located in the Museum of Berlin. The monument is over 10 feet high and was built around the 7th century BC. Esarhaddon is mentioned in the biblical texts such as 2 Kings 19. A bronze inscription was recently found in Saudi Arabia, which refers to Sheba and Yehuda, indicating that there were trade relations between Israel and the homeland of the Queen of Sheba. The artifact is dated to the end of the 7th century BC, after the time of Solomon, though it shows the plausibility of contact between Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, as the Bible reports in texts such as 1 Kings 10. It's not directly reporting the event itself, but what's likely the aftermath. It's likely a memorial displayed on a temple wall and was written in the ancient South Arabian language. There is a 4-inch scroll that was discovered in 1979 in Jerusalem. One of the silver scrolls discovered there contains some of the oldest known biblical passages, written about 600 BC. It was discovered in the part that is called the Old City. It contains the biblical text of the book of Numbers, chapter 6, which speaks the blessing of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh upon the children of Israel that was commanded by the mouth of Jehovah for Aharon, the high priest, and his sons to speak over Israel. The silver scrolls are now in the Israel Museum, corroborating the accuracy of the scribal tradition, in particular of that text of Numbers 6, and the presence of the Jewish people in Israel that far back, at least, in times of antiquity. Also corroborating the status of the religion of ancient Israel as true to the biblical text rather than other religions. And also, why is that relevant? 6th century, you're really going back before the Babylonian exile. So for people who have classically theorized that the Bible was really invented after the exile, and wasn't really the original religion, for example, of the Israelites, or a lot of these stories are just sort of fabrications of them after this time. Weird theories that people come up with. It's not matching with the evidence, and there's a lot more than this to validate the older parts of the Bible, going back to 1400 BC and even earlier. There's a lot in archaeology, so we can fondly put theories like that, like the documentary hypothesis theory, to rest. They're not standing up to archaeological scrutiny. Documentary hypothesis really being a belief of how the Bible faith's inscriptions came to be, kind of late dating it after the events it reports, saying that this is sort of fictional history invented. When it's tested against archaeology, it doesn't read that way. It doesn't read as something written hundreds of years after these events. But we'll get more into that in the later parts of the series. So a ceramic brick with text inscribed on it in cuneiform script dated around 605 to 624 BC and found in ruins of ancient Babylon during excavations 1927 speaks of Nebuchadnezzar II. Mentioned in the Bible in texts such as Ezra 3, Daniel, etc. reads Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, guardian of the temples of Esda, firstborn of Nabopolassar. Hold on, I'm just sort of... Okay. At any rate, Nabopolassar, king of Babylon, now resides in a museum in New York. Numerous biblical texts speak of this same king. A ceramic cylinder is inscribed with the cuneiform text. Actually, to give a bit of correction, that is close to the time. The numbers 6 silver scroll. That's close to the time of the Babylonian exile. It's extremely close, but I think it does come a little before. I think it's maybe 20 or 30 years. I ask your forgiveness. I don't remember exactly the time of the Babylonian exile off the top of my head, but I believe it was in maybe the latter 500 BC period, if I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure the scroll predates it, but I'm open to correction if not. But nevertheless, even still, to late date the Bible would be naive based on other findings anyways, which we can get into later. But for example, the idiomatic expressions appearing in the earlier Bible scripts don't read as things that people could have possibly known, because hundreds of years later they already varied off, and various other things. We can really dismiss a lot of claims like that. So we have more than this. A ceramic cylinder inscribed with cuneiform script containing the name of the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II. As mentioned earlier, he's very popular. This cylinder speaks of building activities, and his building activities was made in 604 to 626 BC. It is 8 inches long and is now in New York in the Babylonian collection of the museum, corroborating that more of the texts in the Bible speaking about this same fellow. An ancient Babylonian table, part of the Babylonian Chronicles, dated to about the 6th century BC and made of baked clay, was discovered in the late 1800s in Babylon and is now in the British Museum. Its text, which is in cuneiform script, records, among other events, the capture of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in 597 BC. 597 BC, there we go. The Silver Scrolls, it's a little bit before, but it's close. But it's weird to have a portion of numbers written before the Babylonian attack on Jerusalem and the conquering and the exile, and then to purport that was written 400 BC. Well, that's quite a bit before 400 BC, so these are some of the claims skeptics came up with at points, and they just didn't really stand up to archaeology. So this event is also recorded in the Bible in 2 Kings 25, an event that was a major part of Jewish history known as the Babylonian exile, when Yudevave executed judgments on his own people for embracing practices forbidden in his laws by the hands of the Babylonian who used to punish his people. Numerous biblical texts detailing the siege and capture of Jerusalem, the temporary exile of Jewish people to Babylon, are corroborated by this. A clay tablet from ancient Babylon describing monthly rations allowed to Jehoiakim, a Jewish king mentioned in 2 Kings 25, which also states that Jehoiakim received favor from evil Merodach, king of Babel, and a continual daily allowance from him all the days of his life. The tablet was made around 595 BC and was discovered in Babylon in 1900s. The text is in cuneiform script, and the artifact is now residing in the Berlin Museum. corroborating the historicity and reliability of the biblical text of 2 Kings chapter 25. A Babylonian arrowhead found recently in Jerusalem amidst material from the temple, matching the types used by the Babylonian army that destroyed the temple in the 586, 590 BC type period. There's some varieties on dates coming here, but it's always the same type of, well, I guess the attack on Babylon, 597, attack by Babylon and the destruction of the temple, different dates. Siege went on for some number of time. Regardless, it's the same general time period. 586 BC, destruction of the temple. Here's a arrowhead matching what we find of that time period and the remnants of the Babylonian army in archaeology. We're finding these arrowheads in Jerusalem, so I guess they shot a lot of arrows that we can still find them to this day. Very cool. This is really corroborating that warfare as attributed in the biblical text. There is an artifact on which is inscribed the name of Pharaoh Hopra. Pharaoh Hopra is referred to in the Bible in the passage of Jeremiah 44. The sandstone block was purchased and is on display in the Museum of Cairo. A clay cylinder that was inscribed with cuneiform text around the 6th century BC was discovered in the 19th century in Ur and now rests in the British Museum. The text on it refers to the son of King Nabonidus, Belshazzar, who is also mentioned in the book of the prophet Daniel in the Bible in Daniel's chapter 5 and 8. The cylinder measures about 4 inches in length. Now this one was really fascinating because a lot of skeptics against the Bible attacked the book of Daniel in particular. When archaeology was younger, what they were saying effectively was, hey, there's no evidence of this Belshazzar, that this king of Babylon. We're looking at the Babylonian archaeology. We're finding nothing about this guy. It sounds like it doesn't exist. This is some fiction made up by Jewish people. Well, later we found a cylinder mentioning him by name and identifying whose son he was, and basically the story is he functioned as the co-regent, as it were, of King Nabonidus. When King Nabonidus goes out to a war with other people, when he's off the scene, his son rules in his place. So that's who Belshazzar really was, and that's why he's identified as king and not the son of the king only in the Bible. He was functionally king in the place of his father when he was gone. The historicity of the dating of the book of Daniel is validated greatly by this. Very nice. Another cylinder known as the Cyrus cylinder, was discovered in Babylon in 1879, inscribed with cuneiform script. This is, I think in Hebrew it gets called Koresh. It describes the exploits of the Persian king Cyrus, who is referred to frequently in the Bible and is famed for his authorization of the rebuilding of various matters in Jerusalem, highly favoring the Jewish people. He is mentioned in Isaiah 45 and Nehemiah. The text contains descriptions of Cyrus allowing captives to return to their homeland. It doesn't mention necessarily they were Jewish captives or whose captives they were. Very possible that they were. It is the Jewish ones it's referring to, of the exile, but could be others. What we do know is it's heavily reflective of Cyrus's actions with the Jews in the text of the Bible. Though the Jews are not specifically named on it, it's consistent with his character, mentioning that he brought a lot of Jewish people back. Well, it sounds like this was part of his prerogative as a person, as a king of history. It is made of clay. It's about 9 inches long and was fashioned around the 6th century BC, and it now resides in the British Museum, corroborating biblical texts of Isaiah and Nehemiah. There is a 10-pound stone dated about 500 BC, made of diorite, currently housed in the Chicago Museum, and it hails from ancient Persia and was inscribed with 3 languages with the text that reads, "I am Darius, the great king." Darius is also recorded as a Persian king in the Bible. This corroborates the biblical text of Ezra and its account of Darius. There is an alabaster jar dated to 5th century BC which was found in Egypt and is inscribed by the name of the Persian king Xerxes. who is referred to in the Bible in passages such as Ezra chapter 4. It is inscribed in both cuneiform and hieroglyphics and is about 10 inches high. It's now in the museum in New York, corroborating the book of Ezra. There is a silver bowl dated to the 5th century BC, which comes from ancient Persia. It is a bowl fashioned as a wine-drinking vessel, which comes from the house of the Persian ruler Artaxerxes I, inscribed with the name Artaxerxes himself, as well as father Xerxes and his grandfather Darius. The biblical figure Nehemiah is in fact listed as a cupbearer in the Bible to Artaxerxes in Nehemiah chapter 2. Found before 1935, it is nearly 12 inches in diameter and is one of 4 such bowls to be discovered. The text is in the Old Persian languages using cuneiform and is on display in New York in the museum. There is a piece of an ancient wine jug, as it validates the historicity of that particular king. It's possible this was Nehemiah's vessel he poured for him, but maybe not. We don't know. It doesn't mention Nehemiah, so we can't say for sure, but it is cool. It is validating the history that we didn't make up this king. Very nice. There is a piece of an ancient wine jug that has an inscription referring to King Herod, who is noted in the gospel records as having the one who killed the baby boys 2 years and younger as reaction to the birth of Jesus. It is around 2,000 years old and was found in an ancient garbage dump at Masada. Very fascinating. This corroborates the historical account of the Gospels noting Herod's reign. Augustus, the first of the 3 Roman emperors mentioned in the Bible in the New Testament, who reigned from 27 BC to 14 AD, is referred to in Luke chapter 2. He is a very well documented historical figure. We have a marble bust of him kept at a museum in Istanbul. Corroborating the Gospel of Luke, Tiberius, the second of the 3 Roman emperors mentioned in the Bible, reigned from 14 AD to 37 AD. He is referred to in Luke chapter 3. He is also well documented as being spoken by the Roman historian Tacitus. His bust is also in a museum in Turkey. Corroborating Luke chapter 3. Claudius, the third of the 3 Roman emperors mentioned in the Bible and New Testament, reigned from 41 AD to 54 AD. He is noted in Acts 2 and Acts 18. Ancient historians such as Tacitus and Cassius Dio also wrote about him. There is, corroborating more of the book of Acts in the Bible, there are surviving to this day coins from the 1st century bearing the image of the Caesars, including those with Tiberius in Mark 12:16. These are what Jesus spoke of, saying, "Whose image and inscription is this?" Several types of coin were in circulation at that time, all bearing the image of Tiberius Caesar, who reigned from 14 to 37 AD, the time of the ministry of Jesus. Corroborating the biblical text of the Gospels. The Temple Mount contains the remnants of some ancient walls to this day, part of the temple complex which was rebuilt by Herod starting in 19 BC. Herod's rebuilt temple was the one visited by Jesus Christ, Yeshua Messiah in the Hebrew. As far as the temple itself, not the outer walls, it was utterly destroyed by the forces of Titus of Rome around 70 AD. The Roman soldiers turned over every stone and lit flames all over, burning at an exceedingly high temperature, so that even in the crevices all the gold contained in it would melt outward and be retrieved from within. They turned over every rock to grab the gold that they could. Ironically fulfilling the prophecies of Jesus, speaking judgment on the temple, saying no stone of the temple would be left unturned. Well, the Romans fulfilled that when they were looking for the gold. And they certainly got a lot of gold out of that temple. In 2004, workers digging in a sewer line in Jerusalem uncovered the terraced stone pool that was identified by archaeologists as the Pool of Siloam, which is referred to in John's Gospel in chapter 9, verse 7. The approximate date of the pool is believed to have been constructed and estimated by the dating of the coins placed in antiquity into the pool lining. The pool is about 225 feet wide, is located at the end of Hezekiah's tunnel mentioned earlier that we've possibly found. Corroborates John chapter 9. An inscribed limestone slab was found in Israel in 1961, dated to 30 AD, with the Latin inscription reading, Tiberium Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judah. Pontius Pilate is known from the Bible as the one who condemned Jesus to his death in Matthew 27. The Bible mentions a location called Mars Hill in Greece, where Paul spoke, bearing a testimony of the God of the Hebrews. It is still in the center of Athens and appears to have formerly had a building on it where the council used to meet. That building is now gone, but Paul likely gave his speech within it on Mars Hill, corroborating the biblical text of Acts. The Bible mentions a proconsul named Gallio in Acts 18 verse 12 in ancient Achaia. There are slab pieces with an inscription in the Greek dialect of the 1st century AD, which was discovered in Delphi in 1905. It originally consisted of various fragments that were pieced together in 1967. The inscription mentions this exact same Gallio. The artifact is now in Delphi, in the Delphi Museum in Greece. Corroborating the biblical text of Acts, its historical legitimacy is defended by such finds. The Ephesian Theater in ancient Ephesus, now in modern-day Turkey, remains to this day. In Acts, reference is made to this theater in which a crowd gathered to protest the ministry of Paul the Apostle. The theater had a seating capacity of approximately 24,000 and it can still be visited today. Nice to corroborate Acts 19. The Bible records that people involved in a riot in Ephesus after the preaching of the gospel caused a great many to abandon their ancestral gods, and they shouted in outrage, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians," in Acts 19. There remains to this day a marble statue of this same goddess known as the Great Artemis. It was discovered in the city and measures over 9 feet in height, made in the 1st and early 2nd century BC. Now on display in the Ephesus Museum. Ephesus was known in the ancient world as the center for the worship of Artemis, and the temple devoted to her in the city was considered to be one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. We could go through a list of characters and kings, namely mentioned in the Bible, that are validated by archaeological findings. For example, Pharaoh Shoshank I, dealing with Egypt, Pharaoh Shoshank I, 1 Kings 11:40 and 14:25, 945 to 924 BC estimated. Some dates will vary. Pharaoh So or Sorkon IV, 737-15, 2 Kings 17:4, Pharaoh Terharka, 2 Kings 19:9, Pharaoh Necho II, 2 Chronicles 35:20, Pharaoh Hophrah, Jeremiah 44:30, King Mesha, 2 Kings 3:4 to 27. From the Aram Damascus area, King Hadadzereli, 1 Kings 22:3, Ben Hadad, son of Hadadezer, 2 Kings 6 chapter 20, 2 Kings chapter 6:24, King Hazael, 1 Kings 19:15, 2 Kings 8:8. King Rezin, 850 to 732 BC, 2 Kings 15:37. Northern Kingdom of Israel, King Omri, 1 Kings 16:16. King Ahab, 1 Kings 16:28. King Jehu, 1 Kings 19:16, or Yehu in that language at the time. King Joash, 2 Kings 13:9. King Jeroboam, 1 Kings 12:6. King Menahem, 2 Kings 15:14, King Pekah, 2 Kings 15:25, King Hoshea, 2 Kings 15:30, and Sanballat I, Nehemiah 2 verse 10. Now the southern kingdom of Judah, King David, 1 Samuel 16:13, King Uzziah, 2 Kings 14:21, King Ahaz, 2 Kings 15:38, King Hezekiah, 2 Kings 16:20, King Manasseh, 2 Kings 20:21, Hilkiah the high priest, 2 Kings 22:4, Shaphan the scribe during the reign of Josiah, 2 Kings 22:3, Azariah the high priest, 1 Chronicles 5:39, Gemariah the official of Jehoiakim's reign, 609 to 598 BC. Jeremiah 36:10. King Jehoiakim, 2 Kings 24:5. Yehukol, the official of Zedekiah's reign, Jeremiah 37:3, 38:1. Gedaliah, official of Zedekiah's reign, Jeremiah 38:1. From Assyria, King Tiglath-Pileser III, 2 Kings 15:19. King Shalmaneser 5, 2 Kings 17:2. King Sargon II, Isaiah 21. King Sennacherib, 2 Kings 18:13. Adramelech, 2 Kings 19:37. King Esarhaddon, 2 Kings 19:37. From Babylonia, King Merodach-Baladan, 2 Kings 20:12. King Nebuchadnezzar, 2 Kings 24:1. Nebo-Sarsekim, Jeremiah 39:3. King Ewil-Merodach, 2 Kings 25:7. Belshazzar, Daniel 5:1. From Persia, King Cyrus the Great, 2 Chronicles 36:22. King Darius 1, Ezra 4:5. King Xerxes 1, Esther 1:1. King Artaxerxes 1, Ezra 4:6-7. King Darius 2, Nehemiah 12:22. And some additional finds quickly noted as well. Joshua's altar mentioned on Mount Ebal in Joshua 8:30. The Gilgal stones mentioned in the book of Joshua 4:20. The walls of Jericho, Joshua 6. Hezekiah's, that one's controversial and we already went over that. Nehemiah's rebuilt wall, Nehemiah 4:6. Joash's water shaft, 2 Samuel 5:1-10. King David's palace, 2 Samuel. Fortified gates of Solomon, 1 Kings 9:14. Jeroboam's altar, 2 Kings 23. Balaam the inscription of Balaam, son of Beor, Numbers 22:24. Tower of Siloam, Luke 13. Rahab's house, Joshua 2. Stairs from the temple to the pool of Siloam, John 9. Hezekiah's tunnel, Chronicles 32, 2-4:30. So here's a nice little quote from the Baker Encyclopedia of Christian Apologetics, 1998, page 52, to summarize. There is actually good evidence from archaeology and the scriptures that the Bible speaks the truth. This was in the same video. In many instances, the scriptures even reflect first-hand knowledge of the times and customs it describes. Just follow the Bible and you'll get there. While many have doubted the accuracy of the Bible, time and time again, continued research has continually demonstrated the Bible is the Word of God and is better informed than its critics. In fact, while thousands of finds from the ancient world support in broad outline and often in great detail the biblical picture listed, not one incontrovertible, indisputable find has ever once contradicted the Bible. That's obviously a bold claim, but this is what we're dealing with. When we get to archaeology, we're finding great things. Now this is just the starting of it, but I'm going to introduce to you some more archaeological findings because the weight actually increases because we get into some more specifics, even more controversial specifics. So I want to continue sharing those things, and I hope you'll understand how relevant this is, because this is taking the Bible out of just the realm of just another religious work, just more religious nonsense, to okay, we've got some tangible history here, we better take a look at this. So this is important, and I think it's an honorable pursuit, and it's worthy of that investigation. So let's continue in the next